Welcome back to the afternoon session here. I'm Derek Dennis. You're watching Law and Crime. We are continuing our live coverage of the state of California versus Robert Durst, accused in the murder of his longtime friend Susan Berman, allegedly to try and stop her from maybe talking to law enforcement about the disappearance of Durst's first wife, Kathleen Durst, who disappeared more than 2 decades ago. Sara, you know, the fact that, you know, Susan Berman, it's believed, at least by prosecutors, called in sick on behalf of Kathleen Durst, I mean, that is, as I said, raising a lot of eyebrows, at least according to Dr. Sapp.
Well, apparently she did it at the wrong time and in the wrong manner, right? According to this witness. But look, if I was the defense attorney here, and Durst has, you know, 3 or 4, but 3 of whom I know, best attorneys in the country. You know, what I would say is, someone's sick, they're sick. I mean, you know, there's no set time when where they're gonna call in. Now, who they called and how they reported it, and what the protocol is in that regard, maybe something that this witness could be obviously establishing here. But the idea is that, you know, it was not Kathy Durst who made that call. Her disappearance was weird. The call was weird. The person that she called within the school is not typically who you would call to report that you're sick and you're not making it. But again, you know, I do take issue with this witness's testimony that, oh, the first day of rotation, oh my God, it's such an important day. You can't possibly call. I mean, if you're sick, and you're going to call in sick. So that's where I would go with that if I, you know, as his counsel.
There was another line of question. Oh, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, to Nima's point, you know, context also matters, because we heard from other witnesses talking about Kathy's state of mind very close to the time of her disappearance, and the fact that she had told at least one witness, if I go missing or if something happens to me, it's Bobby. You know, and then we have the idea of witnesses who had discussed a black eye and domestic violence. And you put that in the context of, you know, the other evidence that's going to come in about the murder in Texas, of which Durst was acquitted, and this judge is allowing that evidence to come in. You know, suddenly you have a picture of Robert Durst that is one of a murderer. And so, you know, I think if you just take this witness's, this doctor's testimony just out of context, I agree with Nima, but then you suddenly put it into the bigger puzzle, and you see that, you know, not only it was unusual for Kathy to call in sick, to not attend graduation, to not attend her first day of rotation, not only the call was made to the wrong person within the school, but then you have her state of mind.
And Sara, this is really the job of the defense here, to sort of poke holes in the testimony of Dr. Sapp and other witnesses, right?
Right. And, you know, when you are dabbling with drugs, you're also dabbling with the wrong people. So it also goes to this idea that the defense could potentially argue that, you know, her disappearance had nothing to do with Bob Durst, that, you know, someone else, someone who was involved in drug use perhaps with her, murdered her, or that is why she disappeared. But yeah, so yeah, they're splitting hairs, but that's what we do, right? That's what we have to do. We're there to cast doubt. And so what this does is it allows Dick DeGuerin or one of the other counsel to argue in closing that this witness is speculating. This witness can't say for sure that there's this one dean or one supervisor that the call should have been made to, that there were options, you know, and that call could have been made to anyone, much like it had been.
Let's talk about this testimony. The court, you know, the attorneys here on both sides spending a lot of time talking to Dr. Sapp there. Is Kathleen Durst and what happened to her on trial here?
To some extent, yes. And there's a lot of evidence that the judge has allowed in with respect to Kathy's disappearance, because that is, according to the prosecution, the motive for killing Susan Berman. The idea that Durst had told Berman about Kathy's disappearance and essentially that he killed her. And so he had reason to believe that Susan Berman was going to cooperate with the authorities in New York with respect to what Durst had done, and that led him to come to her home and shoot her from behind and kill her. And so this really is, even though it's not about the murder of Kathy Durst, it's about the murder of Susan Berman. It stems from the disappearance of Kathy Durst. Now, I say disappearance, but the prosecution takes the position that she's dead, that she was murdered, and that Robert Durst murdered her.
Is Dr. Sapp a good witness after all of this, or what we've heard so far?
They nailed him on his credibility, right? Because now it's obvious to the jury that this guy doesn't. At least there's at least one piece of information that he doesn't know about. He's painting a different picture of Kathy than at least is documented. There's this idea that she may have been of ill health. So that's another potential reason that she may have disappeared. Who knows? And so also, he's suddenly not really likable. You know, a witness who sits on the stand and argues with an attorney who is asking an appropriate question in an appropriate format and is polite, and then the witness gets argumentative, jurors don't like that. And
Right.
so I think that, you know, he did himself a disservice, like Nima said, by going out on the limb and maybe really over exaggerating how well he knew Kathy and how she could never have done this and that, and how out of character it was for her to just disappear, because now he's stuck, you know, and unless the prosecution can come back and clean it up in their redirect, then that's what the jury's left with.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how the big picture of all this, of Dr. Saffier's testimony, kind of plays out. Also on the stand was a friend of Kathleen Durst earlier, really talking about how she came to know Kathleen Durst. It was actually yesterday's testimony, and some of the signs or some of the things in her behavior that raised eyebrows. Let's take a look at that. Certainly interesting testimony from Fadwa Najami there, who's a friend of the, or I should say a sister of the friend of Kathleen Durst, talking about how Kathleen just showed up at their house during the dinner hour, unannounced, frantic, she said, trying to talk to Kathleen's friend, who's Fadwa Najami's sister. Let's talk about this, Sara. I mean, this sort of paints a picture of Kathleen Durst being disturbed about something so desperate that she needed to show up at this house and talk to her friend.
Right. She shows up late. And so that also indicates that, you know, something may have happened that caused her to be late. And also the woman who testified, her sister had her sister was Kathy's friend, and her sister did testify, I think, at a preliminary hearing, but she has since died. And that's why the prosecution has brought in the sister as the next best, you know, witness in line. And so the idea here is that Kathy, you know, had an argument, things are not going well, and then suddenly she disappears. This is very close to the time that I believe the day that she disappeared is when she showed up at this house late for dinner. So it really goes to sort of her relationship with Robert Durst and what may have been going on that may have led him to murder her.
Right, and Sara, the time passing also affects Robert Durst directly, right? He's of advanced age, has a number of medical conditions. There's some real question about whether he's really fit to stand trial, right?
Right. So there's a difference between being physically fit versus being mentally fit. And this judge has focused on the competence issue. And he is competent. He is able to understand what is going on and to stand trial. But physically, yeah, I mean, in the past year, his health has declined severely. His cancer has developed, and he's not getting proper treatment at the Men's Central Jail where he's housed. There's been multiple motions about trying to get him into a private hospital or in a home where he can get treated closer to the airport, and all of those motions have been denied. And this really raises, of course, the pandemic was an unprecedented event. But this idea that a jury goes away for 14 months and then the same jury comes back, and you think that they didn't look at their phone or their computer or watch the news or read some articles, it really does create a very strong appellate issue. But again, as Nima said, is he going to survive? Because he's in very poor health.